Good afternoon. Hi. So this is good on you. So my name is Michael Leworthy. I do apologise for my accent. I know, thank you. What we're going to go through is Windows Server 2012. This is incredibly hard to go through. I mean, it's hundreds of new features. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to overview, and I didn't want to hit you with slides. We have 80 plus sessions on Windows Server 2012 this week alone. And more and more getting posted online. So I didn't want to inundate you with slides and all this type of stuff. So we're going to go through a couple of slides and overview the 10 top features in each capability of Windows Server 2012 and then get into some really great demos and really show you some of this functionality. Now, if you went to some of the sessions before, there's definitely some themes that are associated with our demos, and you'll see those themes around management, multi-server management, around PowerShell, around elasticity and flexibility, and I'm really going to focus on some of those key things to helping you build up your Windows Server 2012 data center and then on your journey to private cloud. So I want to start on why Windows Server 2012. Well, I look at this and I say there's three real great reasons of why you should be looking at Windows Server 2012. We call this the comprehensive cloud platform. What does that really mean? As plumbing, it provides you the best solution for your data center today and the best solution for you to be building private cloud, hybrid cloud, and integrated public cloud solutions on. It has this complete built-in virtualization platform, not just Hyper-V anymore and virtualizing your servers, but we extend virtualization into every piece of what Windows Server 2012 provides. We even have some new focus on around storage virtualization and network virtualization, again, to provide a lot more flexibility in the way that you place your workloads, whether in a data center or automated through a private cloud solution. Our focus a lot is on cost savings and increasing efficiencies. Automation, automation, automation. One great thing about, one big reason we did here, or one big thing that we did here is we went from about 230, 240 commandlets, PowerShell commandlets in Windows Server 2008 R2 to over 2,400 in the current RC. And that's the ones we've counted. So we're well above that now as we might start marching towards RTM. So it shows you effectively everything you can do in PowerShell, all the things you can do in the GUI, all the things that you can be doing by a mouse click, you can automate, script, run, all through PowerShell. And we've got some great new enhancers in PowerShell to help you with that. And the other one is the support for the modern work style. Hey, enterprises are changing. No longer do I have a PC on my desk and I control the information on that PC, I control the way that you access it, I control your environment. My guys are bringing their own devices to work. I don't know what those devices are. They want the same experience on their mobile phones, on their slates, on their tablets, on their laptops, on their PCs. They want exactly the same experience across all of those. And I don't know what they are. They could be Microsoft-based, non-Microsoft-based. They could be iPads and iPods or Androids. I don't know, but I want to ensure the number one thing is security. I want to ensure that my IP as an IT administrator is secured and available to these guys. I don't want to have to rely on a 4-digit security code to stop my profit and loss statement to be disappearing into the nether. So being really able to support the new modern work style to be able to provide the richest experience we possibly can to all these devices out there, but also provide great infrastructure to support that both securely and centrally back into our organizations. So let's have a look at Windows Server 2012. So if you look at these core ideas, infrastructure, application and storage, we answer these effectively by 7 main capabilities. Virtualization, both server virtualization and then VDI for virtual desktop infrastructure. New storage infrastructure, web and application platform, networking, management and automation, as I talked about before, and identity and access. And today we're going to go through the majority of these and show you some new core features and functionality in them. So let's just dive into some of these areas. So the first one I'm going to dive into is near and dear to my heart is server virtualization. and what you would know, traditionally as in the current version as Hyper-V. But it's no longer that. We've really just extended this to be the core basis of what we do with Windows Server 2012. We've not only increased scalability and performance, and I'll show you some aspects of that in the next slide, but we've made it entirely flexible for both your data center and your cloud infrastructure. And what I mean by that, let's have a look at the top 10 things that we've done in Hyper-V. We've introduced a new technology called Hyper-V Network Virtualization. What this does is virtualizes the network layer. So I have my physical layer at the moment, I have a virtual switch on top of that, but I can actually virtualize that network layer. And virtualizing the network layer means I remove the physical restraints that I have. I can actually assign multi-tenant environments their own IP addresses that are irrespective of the physical environment. I can route information completely through that. I can take two subnets and have a single IP address and migrate that across subnets and not have that IP address change. I could take that IP address that I have, 192.168.1.10, and migrate that to my cloud provider, who I have enhanced or I've extended my data center to that cloud provider and not change that IP address. Network virtualization allows me to abstract my network layer from the physical layer. Now underneath, we still have physical IP addresses. And we have IP address translation and routing encapsulation to ensure security, to ensure the servers know how to get that. We have new extensions in DNS to provide that type of capability too. But what this enables me to do is let the physical infrastructure understand what the provider addresses or the physical addresses of that, and I'll leave my applications in the virtual world or the virtual network world and give them these virtual virtual IP addresses and allow those to communicate across my organizations. So it gives me a lot more flexibility in the way that I deploy it. In fact, I can take my physical infrastructure and merge that with my virtual infrastructure as well as I migrate my organizations to my virtual networking. New technology around live migration. I'm going to show you some cool things around live migration. Shared nothing live migration. We have some great new things around clustering, live migration and clustering, but now we can also live migrate outside of a cluster. And shared nothing live migration is effectively live migrating with no shared storage. I'm migrating one machine here, connected by nothing but an Ethernet cable, and I'm migrating a running virtual machine between node A and node B, while that's running, while that's being accessed. And that could be in the same rack, in the same room, it could be across the country, across the world. And I still have access to that virtual machine while that's basically running. Now, massive scale. We've increased the huge amounts of scale in virtual machines. A couple of things. You saw 64 virtual processors as a Hyper-V guest this morning. From a Hyper-V host perspective, we now support up to 320 logical processors and 4 terabytes of memory on a Hyper-V host. So this gives us massive VM density. We can support up to 1,024 running virtual machines on each Hyper-V host. So if you can now throw, say, from a physical aspect, Windows Server 2012, if I can throw 320 logical processors at that, I can throw 4 terabytes of memory, I can easily support hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of virtual machines on that infrastructure. And we haven't stopped there. As I said, we'll walk through some of the new scale enhancements in a second. Now we've increased a lot of the clustering enhancements. We have new live migration clustering. Live migration, we existed in clustering, allowed you to migrate from one node to another. And but effectively it was serial migration. If I wanted to migrate more than 10 virtual machines, I had to migrate them one at a time, one at a time, one at a time. So now we have simultaneous live migration where your only barrier is how much bandwidth you can actually shove down that line. We also got new clustering enhancements. We support things like affinity and anti-affinity. I've got 2 virtual machines that if they fail over in a planned or unplanned failover, I want those 2 virtual machines to stay together. Maybe they're a SQL database and a SharePoint database. I want them to be on the same node. Let's fail them over together. We also have anti-affinity as well. I don't want these 2 virtual machines on the same node as each other. We support clustering, encryption in clusters as well. So now you can encrypt your cluster CSV files and be able to drop your virtual machines on those. Some of the things we do around new technology which we call Hyper-V Replica. Hyper-V Replica provides a synchronous replication of your virtual machines for continuous availability or disaster recovery solutions. You saw a quick demo of this in the keynote this morning. What this allows me to do is to take an offline copy every 5 minutes of that running virtual machine in a replica site and then easily fail over to that. And I'll show you a really quick demo of that. We have new hardware offloading support. We take advantage of all the new hardware features that are coming out to support Windows Server 2012. And the next 3 are exactly that. If the server supports IP offloading, we'll use IP offloading. If the server supports storage offloading, we'll just use storage offloading natively. One of the great things we also now support is virtual fiber channel. So you can actually join your fiber channel LUNs straight to the guest. No longer do you rely on the host and pass through the host. You basically have the LUNs are available in your SAN. They'll be seen through your virtual HPA manager in Hyper-V, and you can assign them directly to the guests. Great thing about that is then you can actually build guest clustering as well based on that SAN infrastructure. Again, massive performance. And then what you saw this morning around ODX, if you add all that together, there's some massive amounts of performance gains in accessing storage solutions. One of the other great things we do in Hyper-V is runtime memory configuration. So with new dynamic memory, while the machine's running, you can adjust the memory profile. So if that machine, you're capping that virtual machine at, say, 2 gig of memory, and you need to up it that, you don't have to bring it down. You can just up it. Up it while it's basically running in that dynamic memory aspect. And then we've built a new switch, the Hyper-V network switch. This is a virtual switch we've had in current version, in previous versions of Hyper-V, but the new Hyper-V extensible switch provides me the ability to build extensions, both Microsoft extensions and third-party extensions, to really just expand the capability of the switch environment. So we saw Cisco this morning providing a quality of service solution. And we've got a number of companies that are building these types of things. For example, Five9 are building extensions to this switch. And many more other companies are now utilising this switch technology to support not only security and management, but also capability as well in that switch environment. So let me flip over to the demo and show you some really great examples of this. Cute music. Here we go. Here we are in Hyper-V Manager. Actually, the first thing we should show you is actually the new clustering things. Let's go to that. So here's my cluster server. Looks and feels, very familiar if you've seen cluster before. And I've got a number of running virtual machines before in here. And as I said before, if you were utilising virtual machines in your current organisation in a cluster, you would basically have to move these one at a time through live migration. So this is sort of, fairly standard. I'm moving this across. It should fail across from one node to another and live migrate across. So it's pretty much exactly how you know it. But the big thing now, as I said, what we've done is had the ability to take and do simultaneous live migration. So I can actually just choose these, click on the move. I'm going to live migrate to the best possible node. And basically, all I'm limiting at this stage is via bandwidth. Now, I've set the limit to show you how it's queuing this information up, so I've set the limit at 2 live migrations at one time. But you can basically open this up. So if you're running 10 gigabit Ethernet, you can just shove these things right down the line from a live migration point of view. So it gives you some really great way to do massive amounts of movement in your environment. Now, this is very important when we start thinking about massive scales and clusters, which I'll talk a little bit about when we talk about storage. Now, from a Hyper-V perspective, we've had a lot of new changes in Hyper-V itself. So I'm going to go and create a new Hyper-V machine here to show you that. I'm going to walk through the wizard. So we'll just call this new virtual machine. I'll just call this new virtual machine 2. I'm just going to give this 8 mega memory just for this demonstration, but of course we know that's not going to run. I'm not going to connect it to a network. And then here, create virtual disk. This is what you've known before. Hyper-V requires you to have a direct attached storage. Now you could use iSCSI and you can use LUNs, but effectively you still have to convince Hyper-V that it's directly attached. It still has to have a drive letter or aspects like that. What we can now do in Hyper-V is use SMB or SMB shares. So for example, what I'm going to do here, instead of storing this on my local drive, I'm actually going to go out to a server. In this case, I'm going to go back to that cluster server that we saw before, hit the Browse button. There's my virtual disk. I'm going to select that folder. You can see now that this is utilizing an SMB share. So I can store my VHD files on SMB shares. Now with SMB 3.0, we've done a lot of work to ensure that the performance of SMB either matches or rivals the performance of direct attached storage. And in most cases we do. So there's no reason to not utilize SMB 3.0 in this environment for your Hyper-V VHD files. And also we support SQL Server databases as well. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in the way that you deploy your virtualized network. Because one of the things before is you probably had to think about runtime of my virtual machine versus storage of my virtual machine. And maybe you're actually making compromises on your servers. I need X amount of storage and X amount of runtime in a single environment. Now you can separate those and have runtime on highly performant runtime machines, lots of memory, fast processor power, and you can have commodity storage servers to support my SMB infrastructure. Really gives you a lot of flexibility in the way you're going to deploy your virtual environment out there. So we're just going to go and finish that. Click the finish button. We should add it to the disk, add it to the server. So there's my new virtual machine. Let's go and have a quick look at some of the settings associated with this. So as I said before, we can now support up to, we can now support up to 1 terabyte of memory in our guest virtual machines. And we can do runtime dynamic memory on the fly. We now support up to 64 virtual processors, so I think this box has 8. So I can actually assign 8 to it, which is a big change over the current 4 that we have as well. Integrated compatibility, so if you're live migrating between AMD or Intel architecture, you can just move them from box to box without compatibility issues. And integrated NUMA as well. So this gives us the ability to scale up really high and provide a lot of performance around grouping of our virtual CPUs. Some other things we've done also, if you have a look here, we actually, if I create a new hard drive, we now have 2 versions of a virtual hard disk. We have VHD, which is our current version. We have an R2 that will continue to support, which has about a 2 terabyte limit. Then we have our new folder, which is our default, a new VHD format, which is our default, which is VHDX. That can scale up to 64 terabytes, and it has a lot of error checking components to it as well, supports 4K files and things such as that. So it supports a lot of the new functionality that is coming in the file server of our new Windows Server 2000 and Windows Server 2012 product. So as I said, by default it's VHDX. You can actually migrate your VHD files to VHDX files. We provide you that solution. You can't go the other way around though. So we also then now have a look at a few other things in this environment as well. We look at our network environment, our network switch. As I said before, we now support hardware acceleration out of the box. So if you've got IP task offloading, if you've got hardware that supports that, we'll basically take advantage of that, and also advantage of SRIOV as well. Again, if your hardware supports these type of technologies, we'll take advantage of that. This really just provides a lot more reliability and also capability and functionality. One of the other things we support also integrated into the Hyper-V environment is NIC teaming at a virtual machine level as well. So you can actually build NIC teams in your virtual machine and actually assign 2 virtual NICs and team across those NICs. So we also support that at a physical layer as well. So NIC teaming is inbuilt into Windows Server 2012 by default. So NIC teaming gives me 2 great things. One, it gives me failover. So if one virtual switch goes down, which has been assigned to a physical switch, I've still got connectivity. The other thing it gives me is multipathing. So basically I load balance. So if I've got, in my environment, if I've got 2 1 gigabit switches in there, I effectively have a 2 gigabit network. So it gives me a lot of fast functional solutions that are available for my virtual machine environment. So now we've got all this goodness, what does it actually mean? Well, what we can do is we can now expand our live migration ability or capability. So you saw live migration in clustering. We can do simultaneous live migration. But now we've got a number of different live migrations we can do. So for example, here I've got an SMB. I've got a virtual machine here. If I go look at the settings, you'll see that this is actually out. It's a little bit grey here, but you'll see this is out on a share. It's actually running off a SMB share. Because it's running off an SMB share, I can actually live migrate the runtime of this virtual machine around anywhere in my organisation that's going to support it. So all I can do is choose the Move button, and it's giving me some choices. One, I can migrate the virtual machine, or two, I can migrate the virtual machine storage. So you've got the ability to migrate any aspect of your virtual machine, whether it's the runtime, whether it's the storage, or whether it's both, completely through either or a clustered environment, a non-clustered environment, even between two clusters. So in this case, I'm just going to move the virtual machine. I'm going to choose a server here. We'll choose server 1. And again, it gives me a number of different options. Do I want to move just the virtual machine or other aspects of this? In fact, I can really go deep into all components of this. I can move the data to a single location and choose that location from a remote server, or even I can actually choose which parts of the virtual machine I want to migrate. So for example, I can actually migrate parts of this virtual machine to different servers if I wanted to. If I'm doing some planned downtime, I want to make sure the VHD file is on fast storage, but the snapshots and the configuration file, I can put on some really commodity type storage out there while I do the planned downtime of the normal home servers. The great thing about this is because I've split these across different servers, it will keep track of all these for me. There'll be no performance degradation. There'll be no end user interruption or application interruption. This is all live migration. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go back and we're going to choose just to live migrate this virtual machine. So we're going to leave the storage where it is, just live migrate the runtime, memory, CPU. Click on next, hit finish. It's giving me an error. What the error it's given me is that the server that you're trying to live migrate it to doesn't have the same virtual switch set up. But you know what? Not a problem. Here you go. Here's all the virtual switches on that server. I can choose the next one. It will assign that virtual switch automatically for me and basically move with the migration. So this ensures 100% uptime while that move is being performed. So you can see that move was pretty quick. It's a pretty small file, and I basically live migrated that over to server 1, and we can see that's running on server 1 over here. But we didn't stop there. As I said, we now provide shared nothing live migration. Shared nothing live migration is when I don't have shared storage. To give you an example of this one, if I just quickly look at the settings of this, you'll see that this is actually running on my C drive. So it's actually running on my normal direct attached storage. And again, I can move this to and from servers. I'm going to move the virtual machine. We can move them over to RDO1 again. This time I'm going to select basically to move the virtual machine's data automatically. So I'm going to rely on the virtual server setup at the destination to determine where all the configuration and the runtime and the VHD files go. I click on next, it will tell me exactly where it's going to go, and I click on the finish button. Now this is going to take a little bit longer. Let me add the network address in again. This is going to take a little bit longer. This is an 11 gigabyte file. So I'm going to have to throw 11 gigabytes through this network. Between these two servers, I might not have the fast network, so this is probably going to take 3, 4, 5 minutes. But as I said, the great thing about that, why that machine's live migrating, it's completely available. So here's that server. I can actually run on that server. I can use that server while that's in the migration format. Effectively, we're doing mirroring I/O at this stage. So we're basically mirroring all the I/O at the host server and the destination server as we migrate those core components across. And then we basically do a cleanup and do the final migration. So again, no end user downtime. I have full access to that while we migrate I'll migrate that across the network. You can see that's happening there. What do we add? A couple of meg, I don't know. So that's from a live migration perspective. And the next thing I want to show you is one of the new technologies we've inbuilt, which is this asynchronous replication called Hyper-V replication. Basically, if I've got a virtual machine that I want to ensure that I can recover quickly if a server goes down or if my virtual machine goes down, Hyper-V Replica is a really great solution for that. And it's a simple thing to do. I grab my virtual machines, I enable the replication, walk me through a really simple wizard. I'll say, where would you like to do it? I'll throw this on a server over here. What type of authentication do you want to use? Do you want to use Kerberos or do you want to use certificate-based authentication so I can replicate to a hosted provider, to a service provider, to my cloud provider. So I can actually fail over to that if needed to. So I'm just going to use Kerberos because I'm internal. What virtual hard disks do you want to replicate? I've got that standard one. What recovery points do you want? Do you want to go back in time, or do you just want the latest and greatest? I can go back in time for about 15 hours, I think, in the current RC. How do you want the data to get there? Hey, this is a big file. So if it's an 11, if it's like an 11 gigabyte file, and you see, if I've got a 50 or 100 of these virtual machines and I'm trying to replicate to a service provider, you know what? I might whack it on a Blu-ray and post it to him or her. And they'll put it on the network, and then we'll do the final replication when that comes up. Or if it's an internal, I can just hit start replication. Now it's fine. Gives me the thumbs up, and I can actually go. So I'm just going to cancel out that, and I'll show you one that's already running. So you can see here, I've got one running. I can view the replication health, and it's saying here that, hey, it's been replicating. We've had 150 out of 150 successes. The average size is 435K. Well, there's not a lot of traffic with this at the moment. And I think the last time was less than 5 minutes ago. So it shows you it's just on 5 minutes. So we're about to have a replication in just a second. So again, this replication with this in 5 minutes. Let's go and test it out, hey? Here we go. Disaster. I'm down. Okay? So my virtual machine's down and my virtual machine is off. All I have to do is visit my replica site. Here's the virtual machine, the replica of the virtual machine. I'm going to hit replica. I'm going to fail that over. Ask me how far do I want to go back. So these are those recovery points. I'm going to just use the latest one. Hit fail over, and I'm basically back up again. It's now booting back up. That's Hyper-V Replica. What you saw this morning in the keynote was Hyper-V Replica utilizing Orchestrator, utilizing PowerShell. We can do everything I showed you. We can do with 3 or 4 scripts, 3 or 4 lines of PowerShell. So it's a very, very great technology for small and medium businesses that want disaster recovery, for large enterprises that are also looking for site failover or server room failover or branch office failover. We can integrate some runbook type technology into that as well. But out of the box, all these technologies are completely out of the box. Woo! All right. Let's keep going. We've got a lot to go with. So the last thing I just want to stop on is the new scale enhancements. And I talked through a lot of these as well, but I think some of these numbers are just staggering, right? 320 logical processors supported from a host perspective. If you think of Windows Server 2012 all up, 640 logical processors for a non-Hyper-V host. It's huge amounts. 4 terabytes for a Hyper-V host. 1,024 virtual machines, 64 virtual procs, 1 terabyte of memory. From a cluster perspective, we now support up to 64 nodes in a cluster and 4,000 virtual machines running in that cluster. Now, you don't need 64 nodes to run 4,000 virtual machines. You could effectively run them on 4 nodes. Your failover would be a bit dodgy, but you could effectively do that if you wanted to. You can see so massive scale enhancements in the current RC that we're seeing in this space. All right, let's talk about management. What have we done around management? Multi-server management. Everything's around multi-server management. I am sick of having to RDP into servers to make changes or having to open up Computer Manager and do this stuff. And I want a tool that has all my simple, basic Windows Server infrastructure management. I want to aggregate events, or I want to do multi-server management. Hell, I just want to add a new feature. I want to put IIS on a box, and now I have to go to that box or RDP into that box. And did I turn RDP on? I don't know. I want a tool that basically does that. Windows Server 2012 out of the box with the new Server Manager is built around multi-server management. And I'll show you that. It's a phenomenal little Metro app that you can build. We have a new role and feature deployment tool. So now, if you want to deploy any role or feature to any server in your organization, you can do it from one spot, no matter where that server is. Hell, you can do it sitting on a beach in Hawaii if you've got access to it. So I can actually deploy. Yeah, we can also deploy that to a VHD file as well. So you can actually deploy the role of a VHD file and then attach that to a server. So there's some really phenomenal ways you can do these multi-server managements. We have a new integrated console, which I'll show you with our Server Manager tool. Over 2,400 commandlets in PowerShell. but a really nice way to know them all and be able to use them all, which I'll show you some examples about as well. We provide disconnected session support. If I start something and something goes wrong, usually it breaks. Like I go, all right, I want to copy this, I want to move this, I want to add this service, I want to make this management change. Oh, something's frozen, I've lost the network. Basically, that stage is going to roll back. We're all based on PowerShell orchestration and automation this time. So effectively, once I've created that PowerShell script, it's stateless. It will actually run no matter what happens. If the network goes down, when the network comes back up, PowerShell script will work out where it was and keep running it as well. So we've got this great ability to ensure the task gets done no matter what. A new Windows PowerShell workflow, which is pretty much what we just talked about from a disconnected sessions point of view. We now have a new Windows PowerShell web access. So you can access your servers no matter where you are in the world through a secured portal and run PowerShell. PowerShell becomes very, very, very important to us in Windows Server 2012 in a way of automating and accessing your systems. You can do more with PowerShell than you can do with the GUI, and in fact, in a lot of cases, you can only use PowerShell. Those GUI bits and pieces don't exist because you're getting really deep into some of the new administration technologies of Windows Server 2012. To help you, we've got a really new Windows PowerShell integrated scripting environment. So this is going to really help you with your PowerShell scripting, understanding of PowerShell and using PowerShell. We have script sharing as well between servers. It gives you the ability to use this script across multiple servers, multiple organizations, all this type of stuff. And again, trying to make things really, really simple, we've built in really simplified syntax and simplified IntelliSense into our management infrastructure. Let me show you a really great example of this. I'm going to pick up my Server 4 again. And here's my new Server Manager. So this is my Server Manager dashboard, and I can actually view local information about the server. So, excuse me, all my local server information is available on local server. So here's all the information about this server. All its events, its services, best practice analysis built straight into it as well. So I can actually view and it says, you know, here's some guidance on how to ensure this box is secure and well managed, my performance aspects, any roles and features, all this inbuilt into that box as well. So that's great. From a all services sense, I can actually take all the servers in my organization and actually view this into this tool. Now, comfortably, you'll be able to manage 30 to 50 servers in this tool. It can manage more, don't get me wrong, but after you get 30 or 50 servers, you're probably going to start looking at some sort of management tool, and I would suggest System Center since I own the product. But go and buy. But, you know, this gives you the basic Windows Server management. I can look at the events. I can look at I can do management of my Windows Server infrastructure here. So you're seeing here's my Windows Server. And the good thing about here is that if I click through some of these, you can see my events are popping up. If I select them all, you can see that all these events are associated with that as well. So here's all the events across all my servers. Well, I've got a lot of servers there. How can I help to ensure that I'm managing the right ones? Well, you can create your own server groups. So I'm going to call this my server group. And then I can just add servers to it. So I'm just going to add these 3 servers to it. Why not? Click OK. And you get 2 great things with that. One, taking a little bit of learning from Windows Phone here. I really like the new glance view of Windows Phone. We've taken that sort of learning to the Server Manager world. Green is good, red is bad. So if you see red, you go, oh, look, I've got some issues here. When I look at my server group, you can see here that we get a new dashboard tile with my server group. So I know I have 3 events. Look at this. 12:23 p.m. on Saturday, my lab went down. And it did. The lab back in Redmond, where I host my servers, blew a breaker. And I looked at all my demos and cried a little. I was thinking it's going to be a really, really busy Sunday for me. But lucky we got the lab up. But you can see here, that's great. So I know that's good. I'm just going to hide those. And they're gone. Oh, I got a service here. So this service is down. You wonder what the service is. So the firewall service on SRv06 is down. Well, I'm actually on SRv04. Well, I'm actually RDP'd into a server. You generally use RSAT, your remote server administration tools on your client to do this. But I don't have to go to that server. I can just basically right-click and hit Start Services, and it will go and start that service for me. So that should disappear. There you go, I'm green above the board. So really easy for me to do that quick management across that environment. You can also see here from my server group, I get the same view in my server group. I can do advanced services. I can do a bunch of things like filtering and that as well. One of the other things it does is really great multi-server management around storage. So for example, I have my file and storage services. And one thing I wanted to point out is if you see these numbers next to these numbers here, that's how many servers that I have currently have that role. So I know I have 1 Active Directory server and I have 9 file and storage servers, 8 Hyper-V servers. So that's a nice way to view that. But I'm going to look at file and storage services. I think multi-server management, when you think multi-server management, events and stuff is really good, but that's great. When we look at volumes, I think it all comes into fruition. These are all the disk volumes across all my servers in my organization, based on how they're set up, based on how much size they are, and how they're being used. And I can choose any one of these servers and go and create new volumes or even new shares associated with that. So it gives me the ability to do great things. One, I can extend volumes, I can access new drive letters. I don't have to go to that server anymore. I can do all this through this multi-server management tool. So it gives me some really great capability there. I think my favorite feature of the multi-server management tool is this. If you click on any one of these servers, it's context aware. I click on this, it knows it's a cluster node. In fact, it knows it's a cluster role, and I can actually remove this from the, right? Same as a cluster role as well. I click on this. Look at this. These really look like Active Directory management tools, right? If I click on this, that's a Hyper-V server. If I click on this, another Hyper-V server. I click on this, hey, that's got IIS on it. It's context aware. So I don't have to know that server, I don't have to know what the administration tools, I don't have to open up IIS and then connect to that server. If I just want to manage the IIS on this server, no matter where the server is, I just click here and it will take me out to that server straight away. Remember, I'm going to use this tool on my desktop no matter where I am. I'm managed in there, remoted into that or connected to that with RSAT tool. I just want to quickly show you a couple of other things as well. So let's go and have a look at PowerShell. So we've done some really great things with PowerShell. We removed a little bit of the ability, a little bit of the complexity in scripting stuff. So if you want to know all the Windows features, you can type get Windows feature and it will show me all the Windows features. Now, a lot of Windows features. So they're all the roles, features. You can see where X is where I've basically I've got them installed. If I wanted to sort of scale that down, before I had to use some parentheses and I had to understand the $_dots and all this type of stuff. Now I'm pretty much using English-based scripting. So I want to get Windows feature where installed equals true. And it will show me just the Windows feature where I install. True, I can't spell true. Well, that's good. I know that works. There you go. They're all the ones where install equals true. So that's really good. I think that's, I mean, from a scripting perspective, that's really good. But let's actually take this up a little notch. You need to know your way around PowerShell to know that type of stuff. So we've built this new Windows PowerShell ISC to help that. And what you're seeing here is the integrated scripting environment with all the Windows PowerShell commands. And you can get any of these PowerShell commands anytime you want. All you have to do, even in here, all you have to do is say, show command. And it will bring up a view. The good thing about that is you can actually start. I'm having a terrible time spelling today. You can start like whittling that down and understanding that. But let's go and view the ISC view, which is the same integrated view. I can do the same thing. We'll go, get Windows feature. There's my Windows feature. I can click on it. If I hit the little question mark, show me all the parameters associated with it. So there's all the things I want from a Windows that are associated with Windows features. So again, I don't need to know this stuff, it's just there. If I wanted to actually have this available, if I wanted a little wizard to help me through it, you know what? I can just type stuff in there. I can type the wizard stuff in there, and then I basically go insert, and I'll insert that in there or copy it in there. But I think one of the best things around ISC is the new IntelliSense. So as I start typing, I get IntelliSense. No longer just for our developer geeks. So here's my Get Windows feature, which is all great. Oh, can't spell anymore. Again, IntelliSense, and then parameters. Shows you inbuilt IntelliSense into all these aspects as well. And I can do lots of things here. It's not just a PowerShell on the local machine. I can do integration of PowerShell across all other machines. I can connect to them. One of the great things about the Server Manager, if I want to run a PowerShell on a specific machine, if I don't want to do the -computer command, I can just basically open that and hit Windows PowerShell and actually open up Windows PowerShell on that server. So I'm basically using a remote Windows PowerShell connection into that server. So that's local to that server. So it gives me that ability, again, to just make things a whole lot easier in that aspect as well. One other great thing that we've integrated as well that I talked to you before is the new PowerShell web access. Now this is giving me a certificate error because I'm using the test certificate out of the box, so you would use a proper certificate here. And then alright, put my password in. And we're actually going to join out here to RD13 SRV07. So we're actually going to remote or PowerShell into that. Sign our way in. Okay, we have a new PowerShell command, a PowerShell window. So this can happen anywhere, right? I mean, this is just a web portal. I think one of the cool things that we can do, and I know you're getting bored with Get Windows feature. You know, it's the only one I know, only PowerShell command I know, right? No, I'm only kidding. All right. So I basically asked the server, show me what roles are installed with GUI. And you're going to go, what? Basically now, the default install in Windows Server 2012 is Server Core. If you've got Windows 8 and you installed it or Windows Server 2012 RC, you would have seen you've got two choices. One's called Server Core and one's called Server with a GUI. Now in R2 it was called Windows Server Full Install, I think, and the other one was Server Core. And we had that whole context that Server Core was not a full installation. Well, it is, it's just without a GUI. And the whole concept here is that by default, we would like you to deploy Server Core. We get a lot of pushback about that and go, well, you know, if I install Server Core and I need to install an application on there, I have to redo the server and all this type of stuff. So what we've done now, Windows Server 2012, is effectively made the GUI a role that you can turn off and on with PowerShell commands. So if you've got Server Core and you need to install an application on there that requires a GUI, you just turn the GUI on, reboot it, go and access it. When you finish it, turn the GUI off, reboot it, the GUI's gone, you're back to Server Core. And that's great. So I can go Server Core and then I can go full. And you're seeing up here, Server Graphical Shell is the full. But we've got this new one called this Graphical Management Tool and Infrastructure, or what we know, or we lovingly call it as Minimum Installation Shell. This is the one in the middle, the one that I think is a lot of comfort for a lot of people. Let me show you what Minimum Installation Shell is. So we're just going to go out to my Minimum Installation Shell server here. I'm just going to show you this real quick. So there you go. Here's the guy. I'm just going to log on to him. And the first thing you're going to see is going to look and feel like Server Core. Oh, Server Manager. So I've got Server Core with Server Manager and the ability to also run MMC. So it's halfway between server core and full GUI. I can actually run MMC on here, I can run Server Manager on here. So if I feel like I need tools on that box, if I just can't let all my GUI go, I can actually run Server Shell. But you know what, again, you can flip between these. It costs you a reboot, but you can flip between these anytime you want with PowerShell. Just PowerShell command, restart computer, you're done, right? And the GUI's gone. All right, let's go to the next one. Next one's around storage. We're doing a lot of great things around storage. I think this is some amazing new storage aspects. Storage spaces being one of them. Now, storage spaces is the ability of virtualizing my storage infrastructure, just a bunch of disks world. I have a bunch of commodity disks. I've got disk cages, I've got cheap disks, and I want to create flexible, reliable storage infrastructure for it. Storage spaces allows me to pull all those disks together in one and then create resilient virtual disks on top. And those disks can be all different. They don't have to be the same. They don't have to be all 1 terabyte disks of all the same manufacturer. Hell, one could be USB, one could be SSD, one could be SATA. It doesn't matter. You can basically, as long as the server can see them, pull them together, then you're building a virtual disk infrastructure on top. And I'll show you a really great example of this. We've got some great new file system improvements. Online check disk, a new file system called REFS, or Resilient File System, which relies a lot more resiliency and does online error corruption. We have a great session on that type of stuff here as well. We also now do thin provisioning and trimming, which is really great when you're creating new or betting on storage. I know that my Hyper-V guys want 1 terabyte of storage, but I've only got about 300-400 gig to give them. I can give them 1 terabyte of storage. It will look and feel like 1 terabyte of storage to them, but I know that they're not going to use that for 6 months. So it gives me the ability to grow my storage without affecting my end user application. We've got some new enhancements in cluster shared volumes and be able to support multiple new roles in cluster shared volumes in our clustering environment. As I mentioned before, you can now do encryption of clusters and a bunch of other stuff as well. SMB3 for workloads, we mentioned when we now support Hyper-V VHDs and SQL Server over our SMB workload aspects. And what we've done is we've done a lot of new technologies within the SMB environment to ensure that we can support it. Because if you think SMBs being file shares, what do we think about file shares? File shares don't remain, the documents or resources on file shares don't remain open all that long. They're a Word document, a PowerPoint document, a minute, an hour, a day or so at the most. If I've got a SQL database or a VHD, I want that on all the time. It could be days, months, years that file is going to be open. So we've done a whole heap of new things within SMB 3.0 to support these long open files and to support the massive transfer required between, say, the runtime and the storage. And as I said before, we can equal and beat direct attached storage in most cases. We now support offloaded data transfer, or ODX. So if I've got a SAN system, we saw EMC this morning in the keynote with their ODX environment, where I can actually just take advantage of it. If it's ODX capable, Windows Server 2012 will take advantage of it. Everything will take advantage of it. So if I'm transferring data between LUNs or transferring data in a SAN, I no longer own the processing of that. I don't have to do the send or the receive as the server anymore. I rely on the SAN to do that, and it goes and does it. And it does it a lot faster than I did. We were seeing a gig a second this morning, and EMC said they can go higher. So, we're doing some amazing things with its offloaded data transfer to really ensure that we take advantage of the new hardware capabilities of the storage mechanisms. We have a new technology called transparent failover. Incredibly important when you start thinking about VHD files and SQL databases supporting SMB. If I'm in a clustered environment, I can't have downtime or brownout time when I go from node A to node B. I can't do that if I've got a VHD environment that's running a transaction system. So I want to ensure that if I fail over, either planned or unplanned, that's transparent to the system. So we now support active-active clustering in our SMB environment. So we have leader nodes and clone nodes. The great thing about that is you get instant failover, transparent failover if the leader node goes down. But you also get load balancing because all those nodes are listening ports for SMB. They all have access to the data. They're all kept in sync. So they're all load balancing your SMB components. Again, clustered environments as SMB, just incredible performance. We now support NFS. Yes, if you need to run NFS solutions with our partner out there that supports another virtualization solution, you can run it on Windows Server and we'll run it damn fast. We'd rather you run Hyper-V, but if you don't, if you can't, then ensure that the underlying infrastructure you're taking advantage of with Windows Server 2012. So you can take advantage of all the things I've talked about: cluster shared volumes, transparent failover, offloaded data transfer, supporting your NFS infrastructure on Windows Server 2012. We have now iSCSI Target inbuilt into the box and available to utilize for all your workloads as well. And a new storage management technology to ensure you saw some of that with our volume management, but a much easier way to manage your storage infrastructure across your entire organization. Let me show you great examples of that because I think demos do this justice. Okay. Let's open up Server Manager. We're going to go to File and Storage Services. And what we're going to do is going to create a storage pool. So what you can see here is I've got 4 disks that aren't doing anything. And these are actually in a RAID or controlled by a RAID device, but effectively they're 4 individual disks of exactly the same size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new storage pool. So I'm going to take a couple of those disks and I'm going to join them together. And so my pool. And the good thing here is if you've got available disks across many parts of your organization, again, you could just utilize this tool. I don't have to be on the server. I'm basically, can access any server in my organization to do this. I'm going to choose what disks they are. Let's go and add, we can just add 2 of them at this stage. And then what type of allocation. So I can automatically add it to the pool. I can manually assign it, but not add it, but I just want to mark it as assigned, because if I've got multiple storage servers in my organization, I want to ensure that I can keep sort of storage aligned to different pools, even though I might not need to add that right now. Or I can add it as a hot spare, exactly what you would know as a hot spare. If one of my physical disks dies, this thing will just spin up straight into the pool. I'm going to automatically add them. You can see there I have a total combined space of 273 gigabytes. I hit the create button, should happen pretty quick. Okay, we're done. I'm going to go create a virtual disk now. So I've got a storage pool, but basically it's just a pool of storage, right? It's not really doing anything. I need to create sort of the virtual disk infrastructure, which is the first idea of what Windows Server 2012 will look at as a disk. So this is the virtualization of the disk layer. So in this case, I'm going to choose my pool. If I had multiple storage pools, they would appear here. I'm going to do it my VD1. And again, I've got inbuilt resiliency with my storage pool technology. I can create a simple one. Hey, you know what? I don't need any resiliency. I can mirror it, or I can create parity. So if I've got 3 or more disks, I can create parity. If I'm mirroring, I'm going to mirror that data across at least 2 devices, usually 3 devices. So I'm just going to choose mirroring here. Again, I can choose what type of volume I want, thin or fixed. I'm going to choose thin provisioning here. And my Hyper-V guy again is telling me, you know what, I need space. I need more and more space. You know what? I'm going to give you more in space. I'm going to give you 100 terabytes of data. Let's take this up. And click next, click create. Hey, it's virtualized. It's not going to care. It's going to be pretty quick. And it's done. So basically now, if I look down here, let's just cancel that. I click down here, you can see that I have a 100 terabyte volume or disk, which I can create a volume on. I can create all these volumes on as well. So I can say to my Hyper-V guy, here's 100 terabytes of data. Now I know I've got 270 gigabytes. He doesn't know that, which is really good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly just quickly create another one. And this time I just want to create I'm just going to create a simple one, and I'm just going to fix this one. And we'll just create this as 50 gigabytes. All right, so I'm just creating a fixed volume at this stage. So this is sort of a normal sample fixed volume, or a fixed disk at this stage. Now the question comes out, so I'm using disk space. So you can see I'm green there, and I can put all the disk space in. You can see they go yellow and red. But what happens if I start running out of space? What do I do? Well, I have to rebuild if I looked at my hardware, I'd have to rebuild my RAID, or I'd have to move data off, all this type of stuff. With storage spaces, it's virtual. It's a virtualized structure, so all the stuff is flexible. So for example, if I want to expand my storage space, I just have to add a new physical disk. I'm going to click on this, click OK, and my storage space is instantly updated with more space. If I want to now, I've got a 50 gigabyte, if I want to, I can now expand this virtual disk as well, and I can say, you know what, I want to make this now 150 gigabytes. There you go. Now that's moved to 150 gigabytes. And again, if I go and create a volume associated with this, my next thing is, creating volumes associated with my virtual disks. I can then expand volumes as well. So it gives you the full ability to be flexible across the way. I can expand my storage pool, expand my virtual disk, expand the volume associated with that disk. And the good thing about it is there's no downtime, no end user interruption. They just basically see more space across the board. So again, storage spaces gives you that ability to cobble just a bunch of disks together, but it also gives you that ability for enterprise reliability and resiliency in that solution. Next thing I just want to show you is I'm going to go back and visit my cluster server here. And I want to talk a little bit about SMB scale out. And this is what I talked about before in the slide deck, that we now have the ability to do these different types of scale out ability. So what you're seeing here is I've got a normal file server for general use. So this is the current cluster environment or current cluster experience that you're going to get or going to see in the current version. And then I've got this new scale out file server application data. So that's the one I was talking about, the active component within that file server type. Once you've created a new cluster, you can see down here, I've got a new one here. When I'm at a file share, I've also got the ability to define further information about that file share. So I don't have the ability, it's not just creating a simple file share anymore. I can fully customize what type of file share it's going to be, and it's going to define configuration based on that for me, exactly what I need. So you can see here are 5 options that are available for you. You can create a quick file share, which is what you know of today. You can create advanced file shares. If you want to use quotas or other aspects, you can do this as well. You can create an NFS share, or an NFS advanced share again. Or I can create an SMB share for my applications, SQL, Hyper-V. You can see when I've done that, let's just go add it to a cluster. You can see automatically it's going to add continuous availability associated with that, or that active component. You can see some things are black, some things are grayed out. This is the configuration. If I've got a highly available SQL share, I don't need access-based enumeration. I don't need caching, because it's not a cache, it's not a file share for storing Word documents. So it's the scale-out component of the new cluster server is just this new role, doesn't cost you any performance, provides you a whole heap of new capability to support that active clustering across your SMB environment, especially for your VHD environment and for your SQL environment as well. All right, a couple more to go. Next thing is we'll turn to networking. And there's a bunch of new... All right, we'll turn to Web and Application Platform. Why not? There's a bunch of new Web and Application Platform features. Who was in the foundation session before? Oh, good. The reason I'm going to show a little bit of the same demo, just a little bit. There's a whole new bunch of new Web and Application features, and really, they're all focused around website density. We've got some great new things around website density and keeping your web applications multi-tenant. these whole concepts of application and initialization, or ensuring your applications are secured and available through things like dynamic IP restrictions. This is the ability to say, hey, if there's an application that is doing something that it shouldn't be doing, so if something's hitting this application more than X amount of times and X amount of seconds or accessing these resources, turn it off or throttle it. We have inbuilt CPU throttling associated with this as well. NUMA-aware scalability, so we have support that both for VHD and also in our IIS environment. Centralized SSL management. So what this gives me the ability to do is now I have file-based SSL certificates. So no longer do I have to import, export certificates through certificate authorities. If I've got a certificate for my SSL environments, I basically drop them into a centralized share, and the IIS controls the distribution of those. So if a authenticated user is accessing that server, they will automatically download that SSL certificate. If that certificate is updated, they'll automatically download that update. Makes my life a lot easier. The whole just works with PHP and Node.js. And hell, we run PHP incredibly fast on our web application platform. And of course, our new common development platform between Windows Server 2012 and the Azure platform as well. Develop once, deploy anywhere across our web application platform. Let me show you a really quick example of our web and application platform. And excuse me, I'm just going to have to remote onto the server. Here we go. Okay. All right, we're up and running now. Oh, someone's been playing with my server. It's always good, isn't it? All right, excuse me for that. We'll just log onto the server one and we'll be done. Okay, so basically what I've got here is a IIS server. I just want to show you a really quick example of some of the things, especially as IT professionals, IT administrators, you can do in a basic IIS environment. So we can just go start IIS Manager up. And I'm just going to go start Task Manager up too. Okay. I'm going to look at the default application pool here. And what we'll do is we'll just look at some of the performance aspects of IIS Manager. Okay, here we go. Sorry, somebody's rebooted my server or something, and here we go. Now we're all up and running. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to throw a bunch of load at this server, and we'll do this by just opening a web application here, which is going to throw a bunch of load. So it's going to open up a bunch of stuff. If you go and look at our task manager here, you're going to start seeing that the IIS worker process skyrocket. Here it goes. Bam, 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 bam. Server's toast. Unresponsive, right? I mean, it gets 99%. I really can't do anything more with it. That's, that one application is basically causing all those issues. Now with IIS, I've got this really simple way to do throttling of applications. So if I go look at the advanced settings, I can actually limit these throttle of these applications. So I can actually throttle, say if I want to throttle this to 50%, 50,000, 1 to 1,000. So basically I'm going to say I'm going to throttle this to 50%. If we go and run that load again, let it spin back up. Look at my task manager, you'll see that that new IIS worker process, it's going to hover around 50-something%. So that's great. I can throttle an IIS application and do that. Well, generally I probably may not want to do that because it's going to throttle every one of these applications. What I can do is I can go a little bit, one step further in IIS, and I can actually throttle things under load. So I can say, you know what, application, I'll give you as much stuff as you need. If you need all those CPU resources, you can have as much as you need until the server's being used for something else. Then I want to think about throttling. So I've made this 1.5%, so this is going to throttle itself right down under load. So here we go, we're just going to close this down, we're going to open up the Busy again. We're going to let it spawn up, go look at our task manager, and you'll see that it's going to skyrocket, it's going to keep going, and we're going to throw some threads at it. So let's throw 5 threads at it. Now, as soon as you start seeing those threads thrown at it, you're going to start seeing this throttling right down. It's going to throttle down to about 1.52%. So IIS out of the box got some phenomenal new solutions, and I think the two biggest ones definitely for IT professionals and IT administrators is the centralized SSL certificate, the ability to just cut and paste certificates as they were files, and I think the throttling of bandwidth when it comes, or quality of service around throttling around IIS. These are easy things for me to deploy in my infrastructure as an IIS solution. Let's now talk about networking. One of my favourite subjects. 10 great new features of networking. NIC teaming out of the box. So supporting fault tolerance up to 32 NICs in a team. So you can really have a lot of fault tolerance across your server. But it also supports load balancing. So we support multipath IOing now in our NIC teaming solution. So you're going to support load balancing, and you're going to basically add bandwidth onto bandwidth onto bandwidth. Network virtualization. We talked about network virtualization in the Hyper-V environment, so we'll sort of skip past it here since we've talked about it. We've got some new DHCP server failover features where DHCP servers you can create a replica of your DHCP server and in a failover environment ensure that those roles are failed over between these replica servers or replica sites. SRIOV for Hyper-V, enabling the virtual machine to access enabling the virtual switch to access the physical environment or the physical NIC directly instead of through the host. Resource metering. We provide a great solution to be able to do resource gathering for you to build or manufacture or create look-back and chargeback systems. And I'll show you how we do this. It's a really, really simple thing to do. We have new dynamic virtual machine queuing, which allows you to ensure that the right processes and the right processes are associated with the right virtual machines based on a priority. We have this new IP address management or IPAM tool. So for organizations that have a lot more IP addresses, we now have an IP tool, an IP address management tool, which allows you to manage allocations, scopes, all the leases associated with your normal DHCP server across your organization. So if you've got multiple DHCP servers, multiple subnets, multiple scopes, IP address management, it lets you centralize that into a single view and integrate that into many components across your organization as well. We also support quality of service and throttling of bandwidth in your organization as well, supporting both minimum and maximum as well. So you can define a minimum bandwidth available to a virtual machine or to any type of network solution and say that's the minimum it requires. And you also can define maximum as well for sort of chatting environments as well. With new extensions into branch cache and really supporting branch cache over WAN links, really extending that capability that we had within R2. And I think the other one, of course, is SMB Direct and multi-channel, which we've talked about, the ability for again, SMB, our SMB protocol to be integrated fully into the hardware infrastructure and then utilize multipathing I/O and multi-channel for incredible speed in our SMB environment. Let me show you 2 really quick examples of some of the networking things that we're doing to help. So we're going to go back to SRIOV4, my famous demo server. And I'm just going to show you, if I look at the settings of any server, you'll see here from a network adapter that I can enable network bandwidth on a virtual machine. So this is quite easy to do. I can create a minimum and maximum bandwidth aspect across this. But let me show you a different way. should just hit the minimize all button. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up a quick script here. So basically I've got a quality of service script. Remember I told you PowerShell is easy. So you can go in there and click the buttons in Hyper-V, or well, it's one setting in PowerShell. Basically I'm setting the NetV network adapter maximum bandwidth at something. Let's go and have a play with this. Let's see if we can get it working. So here we go. I've got a large file here. I'm going to cut and copy this over, cut and paste this over. So here it's going. It's going, should be going a little faster than that. All right, and basically what I'm going to do, I've got a slow network today. There we go. Come on, puppy. All right, we'll keep going. So basically I'm going to run this aspect of the PowerShell script, and what you should see is you should see this plummet. There we go, it's starting to come up now. Takes a few seconds for it to kick in, but now it's plummeting. So you can see it's coming down, and it's going to sit around 5 megabit a second. So basically I've created this quality of service. The good thing about it is because I've done it through PowerShell, you can use this as a response to something. Something can call this, hey, this thing is now using a bunch of network that it shouldn't be. Call this PowerShell script. So you can start orchestrating this through runbooks and through other things like that. If I want to turn it off, click on this guy, and basically now I'm going to remove it. Within a couple of seconds, you should see that start to respond right back up. That's coming up. It's coming up. Here we go. There it goes. It's going flying. Quality of service straight out of the box across any network protocol in Windows Server 2012. So you're just seeing quality of service from a VM aspect there. So it gives me a lot of control on that aspect. The other thing I want to show is resource metering. So let's just shut you off, little guy. Let's clear this. And we're just going to open another script. And the resource metering is actually done through PowerShell. So here I've got a quick script about resource metering. So I'm actually just going to enable all my virtual machines for resource metering. So I've done that. You can see here with the ISC, I can actually run parts of the script, which is really great. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure, from a resource metering aspect, the current usage of RDFV07. So you can see there that that's my current usage. It's about 2 gigabits memory, and how much network inbound, how much network outbound. So I can pull this information out and do things with it. In fact, I've written a script here that allows you to create a cost for that. So here's a PowerShell script that I wrote, which allows you to define the memory cost, processor cost, incoming outcome. So we're putting a dollar amount towards this. So I create this in a function, so let's just go and call that. Oh. Here we go. And we should see that we come out with that VM is costing us $90. So basically, I can take all that information you saw, CPU, disk usage, memory usage, I just plugged it into a quick PowerShell script that does that. The good thing about it as well is I can actually have, say, a lookback that pulls this information out on a daily basis. You know, calculate the VM cost or go out and get my VM information. So basically, from a lookback system, all I have to do is measure VM. So run a PowerShell script to measure the VM. Then basically, once I've got that information, all I need to do is reset the VM counter, and then I can just calculate that information again. So you can see that should change a little bit. Changed a touch because the resets, when we were practicing this morning, the resets were really close. So again, really, really sort of simple demonstration on how we can basically do that type of stuff, how we can do resource management. All right, so with the last couple of minute or two, we'll run through the last one. Look at that, we're going to get there. Identity access. What have we done with identity access? Bunch of new cool things. Dynamic access control. Claims-based access. I don't need to control who has access to what. Here's a folder. Does John have it? Does John's group have it? I don't need to control that. As long as John's a part of the finance group or the health group, everybody who's part of that health group can get access to that. Everybody that starts with the letter P can have access to that folder. I can define basically any claim. If my users or a resource makes a claim, I can actually define that. It makes administration so much easier. Instead of saying, finance group has access to this folder and these people are within the finance group, then I have to keep on top of that. Basically, from the user aspect, I can define metadata in the user and that metadata is used to make a claim on access to that folder. It gives me really, really simple controls around that. Also provides me classification as well. Classification is the ability to go through data and classify that. So I can crawl through data, both old and new data, and secure it, encrypt it, things such as that. We now have a new simplified deployment of Active Directory. In fact, you can deploy Active Directory through PowerShell now. So it's easy to deploy a new role and feature and then go and enable that role and feature. It's really simple through our Server Manager tool. But again, I can use PowerShell now to do that. We now support our new domain name security extensions to ensure there's no rogue DNS servers out there. Active Directory virtualization. I love Active Directory virtualization. AD was never a real fan about being virtualized. It had this issue about dates, issue about timing, virtualization, and the virtualization sometimes upset that a little. Now, it's okay. You can virtualize your AD infrastructure, not a problem. In fact, I can clone my AD infrastructure now. If I've got a virtual machine, I can just basically import, export, and clone that Active Directory across the board. Makes rolling out Active Directory super simple in my organization. I don't have to keep adding roles to servers. I just drag and drop, drag and drop, drag and drop. We've got some new Kerberos constrained delegation. I want to do something on this server and this server and this server, so give me the rights to do that. I can constrain my delegation through Kerberos. And say that if I'm logged in on this server or a computer account on this server, that can administer these multiple servers and these multiple tools. Private VLANs give me the ability to do multi-tenant security and isolation and effectively control a complete network infrastructure associated with that solution. And then, of course, multi-tenant security and isolation. So from an Active Directory point of view, we've done some number of good enhancements in AD to really support, and I think the biggest one, of course, is the Active Directory cloning, the deployment of Active Directory via PowerShell, and the virtualization of AD as well. So I've run out of time just to do my last demo, which is around classification, but you know what? If you hit one of the AD things, they'll be do classification demonstrations, so that shouldn't be a problem. But really, hopefully I've just shown you enough Windows Server 2012 features for you to get excited about. There are 80 plus sessions. Go out and learn about Windows Server 2012. It is, we think, the release of 20 years for us if we think it's that big. But thank you very much for listening to me. Enjoy the rest of your Tech Ed.